Did you know that you hold the key to the safety of your company in your own hands? That's right, you. Of course, the key to preventing accidents and injuries at work is simply working safely. But this little key can make a big difference too, especially for people who work with potentially dangerous equipment. If you hold the key to a lockout device, you do indeed hold the safety of your coworkers, yourself, and the entire building in your hands. Now, before you go patting yourself on the back and looking for a promotion, consider this. Many of your coworkers hold that same key, putting your safety in their hands. Makes you want to know a little bit more about the requirements for Lockout Tagout, doesn't it? So, let's take a closer look at the basics of OSHA's Lockout Tagout standard together. OSHA's Lockout Tagout standard for general industry is designed to control hazardous energy. It covers the servicing and maintenance of machines and equipment when the unexpected startup or the release of stored energy could cause injury to employees. The standard must be followed during any service or maintenance work done during normal operations if an employee is required to remove or bypass a guard or other safety device, or when an employee must place any part of his or her body into a machine's point of operation or a danger zone associated with its operating cycle. Some examples of service, maintenance, and other workplace activities subject to Lockout Tagout include construction, installation, replacement, modification, inspection, lubrication, cleaning, unjamming, and tool change. Some examples of the hazardous energy sources that must be controlled by Lockout Tagout during such activities include electrical, mechanical, hydraulic, pneumatic, chemical, and thermal energy. The Lockout Tagout standard requires your employer to implement a formal energy control program to prevent injuries involving these energy sources through Lockout Tagout procedures, employee training, and periodic inspections.
We really go through a detailed procedure on Lockout Tagout. Make it personal to that individual. You know, we're all here working on a job, but we also want to go home in good condition. And so do it for yourself. Be a little bit selfish.
Before we discuss the actual Lockout Tagout procedures, it's important to know who is affected by the standard and why. There are three types of employees who must be trained in Lockout Tagout: authorized employees, affected employees, and other employees. An authorized employee is responsible for locking or tagging out equipment for service or maintenance. Authorized employees must know how to recognize and locate hazardous energy sources in the workplace and know how to isolate and control them. An affected employee either operates the equipment being serviced under Lockout Tagout or works in an area where Lockout Tagout is used. Affected employees must understand why and how Lockout Tagout procedures are used. An affected employee becomes an authorized employee if his or her duties include performing the actual service or maintenance work. Other employees are those whose work operations may be in an area where energy control procedures could take place. If you fall into this category, it is not your responsibility to know your company's actual Lockout Tagout procedures. However, you must understand the importance of why these procedures are used, and you must never attempt to restart equipment that has been locked or tagged out. Lockout Tagout is such an easy way to prevent needless injury, but only if you understand the requirements and your company's specific procedures. It helps to understand what energy isolating devices do and how Lockout Tagout ensures their effectiveness. Energy isolating devices physically prevent the transmission or release of energy. Some examples include manually operated circuit breakers, disconnect switches, line valves, blocks, or any other similar device. Lockout refers to the placement of a lock over the energy isolating device to ensure that the device and the equipment being controlled cannot be operated. A lockout device, such as a key or combination lock, or blank flanges and bolted slip blinds, physically hold the energy isolating device in position. Tagout is the placement of a tag to indicate that the energy isolating device and the equipment must not be operated until the tagout device is removed. Tags are a visual and written warning not to restore energy to the equipment. Tags must be securely fastened and are often used in conjunction with a lockout device. There are 6 steps for properly locking and tagging out equipment. Prepare for shutdown is when the authorized employee gets information about the type of energy the machine uses, how much energy is involved, the hazards related to the energy sources, and the methods that will control the energy. Shutdown. The equipment must be turned off by following established procedures. Isolating equipment. The authorized employee performing work on the equipment must isolate it from all energy sources. Applying lockout tagout devices. The authorized employee then locks and tags out all energy isolating devices, holding them in the safe or off position. Affected employees must be notified before lockout tagout controls are applied.
On some of our machinery, we have to have more than one authorized employee work on that machinery. So we have to isolate each energy source per individual there. So you have to use a multi-lockout device to do this, so that if there's electrical and pneumatics on that machine, each employee has to put their lock and tag on the electrical and also the pneumatic device.
Releasing stored energy. This can include bleeding off pressure, draining lines, discharging capacitors, or simply letting machinery cool down to make sure the equipment is safe to work on. And finally, verification. This last crucial step ensures that lockout-tagout procedures have been successful in shutting down all energy sources to a zero energy state before repair or maintenance work is performed. This verification may include reading pressure or temperature gauges, using test equipment, or operating control buttons. Once the service work is completed, there are 3 steps the authorized employee must take to release lockout-tagout. First, replace all machine guards and remove tools from the area. Then, check the machine. This means removing any blocking devices and checking to be sure the machine is intact and ready to operate. Next, check for employees. Check the work area to make sure all employees are in a safe place away from the equipment before removing any lockout or tagout devices. Finally, remove the lockout-tagout devices. Remember, this can only be done by the authorized employee who applied them. Affected employees must be notified of their removal, and energy can now be safely restored to the equipment. There are some requirements for the locks and tags. For example, when using tags alone, they must be securely attached by a self-locking, non-reusable cable tie and be worded with a clear warning. All the locks and tags used by your company should be the same size, shape, or color. All tags must show the same warning. Locks must be sturdy enough to prevent unauthorized removal. All locks and tags must identify the employee who applied them. As a general rule, OSHA requires any equipment that can be locked out to be locked out. However, if an employer can prove that using tagout alone provides the same level of protection as lockout, then tags alone can be used. Follow your individual company policy on this exception to the rule. It will probably involve the removal of a valve handle, blocking of a controlling switch, or the removal of an isolating circuit element to reduce the likelihood of accidental startup. In any case, you must be trained on the limits of using tagout alone. There are a few additional rules to keep in mind. For example, if service work needs to continue during the next shift, the lockout-tagout condition must continue. Because the person who applied lockout-tagout must be the same one to release it, a changing of the guard must occur. It's a good idea for the oncoming shift worker to apply his or her lock before the employee who is leaving removes his. You may not simply hand over your key.
Shift changes can be confusing. So the 2 shifts have to get together and communicate what's going on with that piece of machinery that's being changed over. One of the first things that has to happen is the tag, the names need to be changed on the tag. And then after that communication is done, then a person in our company can hand the key over to them, and then the transaction has happened. There's one other issue that can come up. What if that communication doesn't happen and that employee that's left has the key with them? The machinery is still locked out, but the employer has a duty to try to communicate with that employee with that key. They cannot just go out there with a bolt cutter and snap that lock off right away or torch it off. They need to make that communication and document it, and then they can go back and take care of unlocking the machine.
A periodic inspection of lockout tagout must be done on an annual basis to make sure proper procedures are being followed by authorized and affected employees. You should be aware that there are specific requirements for suspending lockout tagout when equipment must be tested during repair or maintenance. Consult your company policy to ensure that all employees are protected before, during, and after energy is temporarily restored to the equipment. You can do your part to keep your workplace safe by understanding the importance of lockout tagout and knowing your specific responsibilities according to the standard. If you come across a situation where a valve or disconnect switch is unexpectedly turned off but is not tagged out, contact an authorized employee to investigate. Don't restore energy until you know the reason for a shutdown that appears out of the ordinary. It may be an oversight and a serious situation where a lock and tag should be applied. And if you have any questions about lockout tagout, be sure to ask your supervisor. Understanding the regulation and doing your part will help you lock up safety in your company. And for that, I suppose, you do deserve a pat on the back.